and welcome to the podcast. We are here on the stage at Later Alligator with Corrine Joy.
Yes.
That's your real name?
No.
Okay.
That's my alias, but
your Facebook name.
It's yes. Corinne Chamberlain is my name.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. We get that. I always start off every podcast by butchering people's name. Something to do with their name. Either I didn't know that wasn't your real name, and I should have asked you beforehand, or I've had friends come on here that I've known for years, and I don't know their last name, or I at least don't know how to pronounce it well.
Corinne Joy's simple, so.
Yeah, it's good. It keeps all the...
I answer to that as well, so.
Good.
It works.
Good. So Matt Klempa suggested that I have you on as a guest, and I said, yeah, let's have her on. And then I saw him a couple of days later, and I'm like, so what does she do? Because
is she interesting at all?
Well, his word is bond with me. If he says that you'd be a good guest, then I trust him. But then I found out a little bit more about it, that you moved here from Pittsburgh, and so I shouldn't tell your story. You could tell your story. So tell me what you're doing in Pittsburgh, and then what you're doing here, and how you came here.
Well, I had grown up in Canonsburg, 84 area. I went to Canon McMillan High School.
Okay.
And so that's where I was from originally, so it's not incredibly far. I did go to Jesuit.
Okay.
I graduated in 07, so it's 10 years now, which is still crazy for me to really accept. But I worked at Jesuit a couple years after graduating, and I did AmeriCorps.
Oh,
so
okay, cool.
I worked in the Service for Social Action Center, where we coordinated volunteer opportunities for students and service experiences that was more than just going and serving food in a soup kitchen, but also having folks sit down and speak with the people we're serving and understand why we need to have these sort of programs to begin with, and explore the systemic changes that may need to happen. So we don't need to have these programs, and that was something I really identified with. But it was AmeriCorps, and so it's a temporary contract, and $9,000 a year is a little rough.
Yeah.
So
Especially if you have school loans.
Right, and so I moved to Pittsburgh. I moved to McKnight Road area, like on the like North Hills.
Oh, okay.
And I kind of moved every year in Pittsburgh, just different jobs, different reasons, and I lived in like 2 minutes from the stadiums.
Oh,
that was really fun. Being single and living that life was quite a good time, somewhat exhausting.
Yeah.
I taught preschool there, actually,
nice.
In Wexford, and I like that, but also exhausting.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, very little money, which eventually comes into play, especially if you're living in Pittsburgh.
Right. Yeah. If you're living by the stadium, I'm sure it's not cheap lifestyle.
Right. So, I got a job with an insurance company, and that's where I was working for about 6 years. I had lived back in Pittsburgh for about 5 years after I moved from Wheeling, and I just decided at one point that I missed this town, and I kind of felt like I was losing a lot of what I learned here, and I was getting away from just, I don't know, who I was, who I really liked in Wheeling. Like, I really liked myself here, and I liked the things I was doing. I missed, I kind of came of age here because my parents split up whenever I went to college, so I didn't really have a sense of home anymore. So, here was kind of like my place where I learned a lot about myself, about humanity in general, and so I decided to move back. And that is when Klempa was looking for a roommate, and so it just kind of worked out because we had gone to college together.
Oh, okay.
So that just kind of worked out nicely because some places around here are difficult to rent because they're very expensive.
Yeah, the gas and oil has made the rent ridiculous around here.
Right, and everything kind of came together perfectly. I knew a guy. I had worked on the first Obama campaign in 2008, and someone I met during that time, him and his wife were renting their house, and they would allow me to have my animals, and reasonable rate, safe neighborhood, wonderful people that are like-minded to me, and so that kind of worked out. And so we have a little house, and it's nice. I really like it.
And Klempa's a good guy.
Yeah, so that's how I ended up back in Wheeling.
So, where do you work now?
I work for the Catholic Charities Neighborhood Center.
Nice.
Yes.
You get to help people. And you were saying before the podcast that today's the food drive day, or I'm not familiar with any of that because I live in Ohio.
Okay. Well, we do have multiple services for people, and that's everything from they can come in and get a hot meal for breakfast and dinner. There is a cold lunch that they can swing by and pick up if they want. We also have a food pantry that runs on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and folks get a packed bag full of different non-perishable food items. And then they also can choose a variety of breads, baked goods, produce, meats, and things. And they can come once a month and get a whole cart full of stuff.
Wow, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. So today was one of the food pantry days where we had almost 70 people, which was a lot. But it just goes to show about how much need there is in the area.
So it's a little bit different lifestyle than working for an insurance company.
Yes, and it's a welcome change. Whenever I moved back to Wheeling, I was working at home, which was nice, and the wages were pretty good, but I really wasn't happy, and also I was having a lot of health issues that were already existing, but I think that unhappiness just exacerbated it.
Absolutely.
And it just made me even more miserable, and I just felt like my body was like telling me like, you need to change because this is just not working.
Right.
And as I said before, how I just really liked who I was doing nonprofit stuff, and that's pretty much what I told them in the interview was like, I haven't done this for maybe 8 years, and I want to get back into it for a variety of reasons, and so I'm glad it worked out and that they picked me, but it is going really, really well, and I'm really happy.
It sounds like life has dropped you right in the place that you needed to at the right time.
I think so. Everything just kind of lined up and worked out well, and they've been wonderful. The first week I was there, I had mono, and I got really sick, and then my arm and everything, and they've been wonderful for, my overcoming those things and dealing with it, and also just from working from home for 3 or 4 years to actually having to get up and
right
work. I mean, just that small dynamic, it's like and just learning, how much can I be independent about this, and how much do I have to consult about this, and those things. But it's going well, considering I've just kind of been a hermit for 4 years. Other than I would go out probably a little bit too often because
you would
I was
almost
stuck
need
at
to,
home.
right? Yeah, you'd be at home all day by yourself. You would probably crave the to be around people, so it would make you want to get out more often than maybe now. If you have a day when you're around, I know. I like my coworkers and I like my job. At the end of the day, I'm ready to just be alone for a couple hours. So I don't generally go out after work because the last thing I want to do is see people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's probably nice to have coworkers, especially if sounds like where you're working.
It is. Like, I actually go out to lunch now, and before I only had like a half hour time where I could, so that wasn't enough time to go and socialize or anything. But now, like, I have a coworker we go out to lunch like fairly often, and then I can also go out and meet other people for lunch, or and it's nice. Or I could go read a book and sit down somewhere, which I have here quite often. So it's just those little things that you don't realize how much they impact you until either you don't have it or you like get it back, and it's like, wow, this was actually a little thing that's wonderful.
It is amazing. On the last podcast we were talking about morning coffee, and for me it's a kind of a ritual, and it is one of those things that I kind of makes my day, and I'm starting to realize more and more that it's the little things that you cherish that are way more important than the big things, because they're attainable, and you can have a little bit of joy every day from them, instead of waiting for some big thing. Because I think a lot of times for me, when something big happens, I get overwhelmed by the moment, and I must think, man, I should be appreciating this more, and it's more than you can take in. That's kind of off topic, but
no, but I totally understand.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy to be overwhelmed by big things or big changes,
Yeah.
but
so
it could be good.
it could be, yeah. I mean, and it's good to have those good things, but there's something about just the fact that you have a relaxing lunch where you walk down to the waterfront and you feel refreshed for the rest of the afternoon, and you come to look forward to that moment every day or whatever it is that it may not seem like it impacts your life greatly, but cumulatively over time, the ability to do that kind of puts you at a certain peace, I think.
Yeah, it really does, because by the end of the day, I would be just so I felt like I didn't really have a break, and that extra half hour was just great for my, mental health. But then also, I do also like this job very much.
Right.
So that also has a lot to
Oh, absolutely right.
to play.
Yeah.
I mean,
not only did you have a nice break, but when you're actually doing the work.
I'm actually all right with going back.
Yeah, you're not like,
I'm not dreading
lunch is
it.
over.
No, yeah.
That is important to have a job that when you walk in the doors there, whether in the morning or after lunch or whatever, to where you're glad to be there.
Yeah.
And for me, I tend to just try to look at the positive things, and I try not to think of my job or anything as something negative, even though I may not like it every day or every aspect of it.
It took me 6 years to feel that way.
Yeah.
With the working with an insurance company and everything, so I have a long threshold in which I'm able to be positive.
Yeah.
But then once it starts to hit where I'm not, that's pretty much it's done.
That's true. Yeah.
I'm just done. Time for a change. That doesn't mean anything's wrong. Just means that I need to do something else. Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's an important characteristic, to have the ability to recognize that it's time to change and then to act on it. Some people don't have any of those pieces of the puzzle. Some people only have the first one, which is terrible, because if you don't have the second piece, then you find that you're miserable, and then you just stay there.
When you're 70 and oh well.
Yeah.
This job made me absolutely miserable my entire life.
Yeah.
And yeah. I just can't live like that.
No, and I'm sure it was taking a chance, moving and starting a new job and leaving everything behind.
But it was good.
Yeah, it's working.
It was
for
good.
you.
A lot of transitions happened whenever I moved here, and then whenever I worked at home here for, it was 3 years before I got this job, so I was here for a little bit. But I also felt just kind of recluse, because I was just home, and I went to local watering hole, the 19th hole, which if any of them listen to this, they'll probably laugh, only because I have met probably some of the best people ever, just me just walking into that bar and just well, I have nothing to do, but I just want to socialize with literally anyone, and I've met some wonderful folks that way, and so I still stopped down there.
That's cool.
But it was nice, but I also wanted more opportunity, and what I like about this job, even though I'm just a few months in here, it's also giving me an avenue to speak to different people and talk about different nonprofits in the area and meet other like-minded folks, and that's really nice, because I do like meeting a lot of people and learning about different people, and I love seeing a lot of the same people all the time whenever I go out, but I wanted to also have an opportunity to meet other people that do other awesome, great things in Wheeling.
Yeah, if you can have the opportunity to meet people that are like-minded and that kind of have that same goal in mind. So if you find a job where it suits you,
and just
that
networking too, just a lot of just networking with, for the organization that I work for now, and learning about new community partners that we haven't tapped into yet.
Yeah.
And there's such a wealth of nonprofits around here that's really kind of mind-blowing.
It is.
And there's ones I'm just learning about, but we can totally help each other, and it's nice being able to meet those people and connect them to my organization as well.
Sure. And this comes up on the podcast all the time, so people are going, he's going to talk about it again. But the idea that it's a real supportive community where everybody will help each other, and I think it's the one place that I've lived in where people seem to get it, that by helping your neighbor, you're helping yourself, because you're elevating the whole community. So acting selfishly really limits the growth of yourself and everybody around you. And somehow that just seems to come natural here. Maybe it's because it's a smaller community and we have to rely on each other. Whatever it is, it seems to be working in that way where Amanda was pointing out, like she had a shirt on that said Later Gator and Willing Brewing. Now in other cities and other places, those two businesses might hate each other because they're down the street and they're kind of competitors.
Right.
But they work together. And I think that's, at least from my experience, is unique.
Well, I think also here, just for survival of businesses. I mean, how many have we seen that have come and go? And I think with smaller places that have similar interests and values of reinventing wheeling, I think it's awesome that they're doing that, and it may be vital for survival of the businesses too, to be able to network and work together with things so they can both survive.
And that's what the sign on the door of Later Gator, eat or we both starve.
Right.
And it's really true. And
I mean, yeah, it's a codependency that's good.
Yeah. And I think that more than any place I've ever lived, this is a place where I guess I always use the term synergy, but I always hate that term, but you could say healthy codependency, right?
Right. Synergy does sound better, but my psychology background makes me say, codependency, it has a negative connotation, so...
Yeah, for me, synergy sounds like such a corporate thing, but yeah, codependency also. I haven't found the right term. I might have to find a new term for both of those that kind of means those both technically work, but they just sound. I don't like the way either of them sound, but
it doesn't fit. But I think people get what we're saying.
Yeah.
They get what we're throwing down.
That people are cooperating with each other, and I definitely love finding those situations where they're mutually beneficial for everybody. For me, that's exciting when you can make that
mutually
connection.
Beneficial.
That's probably, there it is.
That's probably it.
Yeah, that's probably it right there. All right, problem solved.
All right, have a good night, everybody.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for tuning in. Next up on the podcast, I love that people, at least the people that I know, they care about the city and they support what other people are doing. Not a lot of haters, and that's important for a community to grow. I think whatever anybody does, if they're successful, that only helps me in whatever I'm trying to pursue. And so I try not to. I try to help everybody. I think it's just fun to help everybody. I like to see positive change, and if you could sit back and go, I kind of had a little hand in that. It's definitely a better feeling than holding people back.
Right, and I think one of the things that I really liked about this area is that there's a lot of opportunity to get involved and really make an effective change, or at least feel like it.
Yeah.
And in Pittsburgh, I mean, there was, of course, like a wealth of things, and I volunteered with different things, animal shelters, and then also, some homeless outreaches, and I dabbled in stuff like that. But it just kind of felt like I was like lost in the shuffle, and it's like, well, I have a lot of like skills that I want to use somewhere where they actually need it.
Right.
And here you could literally have a conversation with one person and have a ton of opportunities to get involved and be a part of a particular culture and group of people, and
sure.
It's unique and it's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, it's really at a malleable state right now. And one of the things that I like to say is that I'm technically a millennial,
right.
An older millennial, but I am. But I choose to live here partly because of what you were speaking about, how wonderful, like people are and friendly to each other.
Right.
But also, I think that it's at a perfect point in its development, like Wheeling, that young people can really make a difference.
I agree.
And one thing that I've spoken to some college students and other stuff, because sometimes I do things at Jesuit. I say, well, everybody bitches and complains about, oh, well, there's nothing to do here, or I don't like this about this town. Yeah. And my response is, well, what are your ideas to change it? Because it's totally realistic that you can.
Yeah.
And so we're at a point where we can make it what we want. And that doesn't happen. Like,
we're on the ground floor.
I mean, it's not like as easy, in a big city somewhere. It's like, yeah, there's a lot more things to do. But I mean, even the time that I left for 5 years and I came back, there was so much more stuff going on here.
Right. Yeah.
Within 5 years. And young people having businesses and getting involved in things and new things happening with music and it's just awesome.
It has been a big change in just the last 5 years. I agree. And you're right. I think part of the thing about being in this size community, you don't have the luxury of casting people off or of staying within a clique. A bigger city, it's easy to get lost in the mix.
Right.
There's
pros and cons,
certainly,
and
sure.
It's not for everybody, but
yeah,
and that's okay.
And there's obviously more opportunities there, but I can see where people might be less open to either cooperating with their neighbor because it's more competitive, or just to the point where they maybe aren't as open to meeting new people because they already have so many friends. They have so many reference points, whereas here there is a limited supply of certain things, and so when you meet somebody that's cool and like-minded and you get along with them, A, you get to see them again because we all kind of hang out in the same circles, and B, I don't think anybody here has too many friends or too many people that they kind of feel that they have their kind of like-minded with, so it just kind of pushes us together, but it's big enough where we have a nice diversity of people interested in things. And you're right, in the last 5 or so years, a lot of different groups have started and different businesses have started that have made it a really nice environment for people like us that are interested in those things.
Yeah.
And just even this place, we mentioned on the last podcast, Mitch built the stage here, so now they have music, so there's something to do on Wednesday nights, which I think I met you here for the first time on a Wednesday night.
Yes.
And it was nice that they that there's this thing to do on a Wednesday night that there wasn't before, and so that's just another level of things growing because we're here on Wednesday night, we met each other, and it's hard to recognize in advance how these things will positively impact a community, but sure enough they do, and I think a lot of times people look for big changes, but it's these micro changes that just help things evolve naturally over time.
Right. Well, it seems, like maybe day-to-day things don't really change, but when you look back a couple of years, then a lot of things are different.
Yeah. And
which is, pretty neat. But yeah, those little things you don't really necessarily notice. But I mean, it's been pretty busy back here on Wednesdays, and
it is.
It's nice to see in it. And like some of my friends that I met at like the 19th hole, like we've talked and kind of struggled with, well, like what else is there to do sometimes? And winter is kind of tough. There's a lot more going on in the summer and everything, but it's like, we always go and just kind of chill there and have a good time, but it's, trying to find like, other things to do. And like, I kind of hang out with multiple different crowds.
Sure.
But I like whenever there's things that everybody could be interested in that isn't necessarily just going to the bar.
Yeah.
Now, I love going to the bar, so don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I do like some different things, You
need a little bit of diversity.
Right.
And I do think that oftentimes I've heard people say that there's nothing to do in Wheeling, but then I think, man, I don't have that problem because maybe just the circle that I'm in or something. Mm-hmm. There are things going on, but I think a lot of times when people say that and I'm stealing this off of Howard Monroe, actually. I heard him talk about it on the radio. But there's actually plenty of things to do, but you have to, A, leave the house.
Right.
Turn off Netflix.
And you have to look, and it's,
Yeah. And embrace new experiences.
Right. And there is so much more, going on here, within the past 10 years.
Oh, sure.
And it's refreshing and it's awesome, and there's lots of new things to try.
Yeah.
And I've gone to things that maybe I thought, well, I don't know if that's really my speed, but then I end up having a good time and meeting things and, like meeting different people and learning new stuff. And that's nice. I mean, when you feel like you kind of know everyone already in Wheeling, which I know some people that have lived here for their entire lives do.
Yeah, right.
They've already met everybody to meet, but I just don't necessarily think that's true.
I don't think that's true at all. Yeah, I mean,
you're just doing the same things the time.
Yeah, I think when people say that there's nobody to meet or that there's nothing to do, I think they really mean that there's nothing that fits them like a glove that they want to do. So maybe to have something to do, you have to go to a play. Well, guess what? You go to the play, you find out that you really like going to the play. So in a certain sense, the fact that there aren't as many things that might be custom tailored to somebody, if you're at least bored enough or adventurous enough to say, I'd rather do something than nothing, there's these neat things to experience. And I think for people to do that, you enrich your life by getting outside of your wheelhouse and trying something that maybe isn't exactly what you think you want to be doing on a Saturday. But then you find that, man, the people were cool, and it was that was, I didn't realize how much fun that activity could be. But as far as meeting people, I just went to a heavy metal show on Saturday night, and that was because I met this dude that's in a heavy metal band through my friend Sarah, and I'd always heard about the metal scene. I kind of wanted to check it out, but I didn't really. I don't know what I thought it was going to be like, but I met this whole big group of people that I didn't know existed, and the music was great, and I had a lot of fun, and I just kind of rolled in there by myself, and everybody was very warm and inviting, and people don't realize that Wheeling has a huge hip-hop scene. They have a hard time finding venues, but for people who are a little bit adventurous, if they're not, they should be, because there really are some really cool things to do. And be careful, it'll probably broaden your horizons.
God forbid.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But you said that you went to the hole and you just met people just by hanging out there. And have you found that people are less approachable now than they used to be? As far as when I was your age, when I was young, you could go into a bar, and if you're standing next to the bar and someone at the bar and ordering a drink, said, what are you drinking, or whatever, people would talk to you. They may not necessarily want to talk to you, but I've had that experience where I've just struck up a conversation with the stranger while waiting in line, and you would have thought that you had the plague. Like, what are you doing talking to me? I don't know you. Nobody introduced us. That's probably the more extreme reaction, but just where people are real uncomfortable talking to strangers. I don't know if it's because people they have so much interaction that's non-personal, Facebook and text messaging, or what it is, but
I think in some places that may be the case. In there, no. Very friendly atmosphere. I mean, I've met a ton of my closest friends, just striking up conversations with them. And I know some people that they travel for work and they periodically stop in Wheeling and will come to the hole because they've met so many nice people there. So it's, I think a lot of it has to do with even the bartenders and the kind of community that they foster. And a lot of the folks in there are just kind of up for having a good time, and they're, a
little bit more open-minded when it comes to meeting strangers.
Definitely. And also, for me to answer that question, I feel like it may be, I'm a young female, and so I think, there's guys that will talk to me, for sure, but whether I want them to or not. So that isn't necessarily too much of an issue, but I think, though, now at this point, I can go in there and not make plans with anyone, but know that there's someone I know going to be there. It's like Cheers. It's like my
Cheers.
Cheers.
Regular. Yeah.
So it's hard for me to answer that because it's like, well, I feel like I talk to people in there, all the time,
Yeah.
but then it may be because I'm so much ingrained in kind of like that
Well, and it's a big
little
comfort zone for
society
you.
there.
Yeah.
And it is. I
Yeah.
mean, it was like, one of the only places I would go whenever I was like, feeling okay enough to like go out whenever I was
Sure.
working at home. And it was right around the corner from my house. And
Yeah.
when you stay at home all the time and you don't really do much other than that, I mean, it's hard to go out and do
Yeah.
other things because it can invoke a lot of anxiety, really.
Well, yeah, and that is kind of the double-edged sword of having a place like that where you feel so at home, is that every place else feels foreign, and it's very easy to feel comfortable, and it's not that it's a bad thing, but I know I would get into that rut where when I used to go out a lot when I was younger, that it would be Saturday night, and I would just think to myself, man, this is like the last 6 Saturday nights, and it's I'm seeing the same people, having the same conversations, and at some point every now and then I'd rally the troops like, we just got to go somewhere different tonight, whether we go dancing or just go to a bar that we've never been to before. We got a big enough group that we could kind of take over the place, but we should just and maybe it's just me, but I get into that rut where I just can't go there again. And as I get older, I have less and less patience for that repetitiveness, that I'm more apt to seek new experiences and meet new people. And so this has worked out good for me because I've definitely met a lot of new people.
Certainly, yeah.
Since
Great.
It's and with the filmmaking and that, I've also it's kind of spoiled me in that I'm so used to now when I hang out with people, we're working on something. So I still have plenty of times when I go to a bar and just hang out with people, and but
this is it's a much different of a capacity. Like, I mean, it's a completely different.
Yeah, it's a different kind of hang.
It's completely different.
Well, yeah, because we're having a more intense conversation, and we're basically just met each other, and then we're sitting down and having this much deeper conversation than we would if we were sitting around one of the tables out here with a group of people, where we might chat a little bit, and I might find out a little bit about you. But so it's a unique level of discourse because it's slightly casual and slightly focused. And then with the filmmaking, you're joking around, you're having fun. As you get to know people, you start to talk about your day and other things that aren't related to the film. But at some point, you come back to where you're working on a common goal. So there's almost like that army buddy type mentality where you bond over the fact that you're working towards the same goal. I don't know. So I've kind of gotten used to when I'm spending time with people, like, we should be working on something. And there's probably sometimes when I need to learn to just hang out with people, and you don't have to
it doesn't always have to be intentional.
Yeah, it doesn't have to have a goal in mind. You don't have to need to accomplish anything, but
that's your comfort zone.
Yeah, and I'm old, so I want to, time is short. I want to accomplish things, and so plus I spent more than enough time hanging out in bars. Different
times in life. I mean, things I was doing, 6 years ago, I would never dream of really wanting to do now, and in 10 years, I may be like, I feel like if you stay the same your entire life, like, it's kind of boring. Yeah. And I don't know.
Do you find? Go ahead.
I'm okay with changing. Like, changing sometimes really sucks.
Sure.
But in hindsight, I'm usually pleased with,
sometimes
how everything works out.
Yeah, sometimes life throws you a curveball, right? And you may not see it as a good thing at the time. It's only until after the dust is settled you're like, oh, that was a really good thing. Same with like life lessons. Usually the most important ones suck. They're really they hit you hard, but that's why, because you needed to learn them, and the only reason why you still remember them years later is because they were so hard, and it's the ones that hit you hard enough to change your life, or to change the way you do things. And so whether it's a forced change or one that you decide to make in yourself.
I mean, if it if it was really easy, then it's probably not like
that important.
Yeah.
Well, have you noticed that it seems like some people are constantly evolving, and other people, you maybe went to high school with, you run into them like years later, and it's the same person, only older.
Yes.
Yeah. Which.
Yeah. I mean, whatever. But I think for me in those situations, depending on whether or not I had a friend with like a profound friendship with them at some point. I mean, sometimes it's disappointing, and I have to understand that, well, maybe they're growing in ways that I'm not, or
That's
maybe, I mean, it might not just be them. It could be me. I don't know. Or, they're in a place that is still, so.
Maybe it's just working for them.
Yeah, maybe it is. Or maybe it's not, and they're upset about it all the time and have not made any change whatsoever.
Well, that's true, too.
And I think for me, it's just frustrating because I always want to help people, and listening to it whenever no one really actually changes or does anything, it's a little bit difficult. But I'm also learning to just kind of let things be, and I don't have to help fix people, and I don't always have to give people advice.
Yeah.
I can just let them do whatever they're going to do and be able to let things go when it's not, conducive to my own growth as well.
Right. It is hard, though, if you're the kind of person that's used to seeing a problem and fixing it, and being proactive about it, whether it's helping a person or whatever it is, to shift gears out of that, because for a lot of people that comes natural, and it is hard to just say, I'm going to walk away from this.
Whatever.
Yeah.
But I'd still be there if they ever needed anything, but it's
Sure.
like you have to distance yourself too, rather than get yourself involved too much in other affairs that don't really, pertain to you at all.
To you, yeah. So, AKA mind your own business sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think that I'm starting to learn more and more to pick my battles, and I was having this conversation the other night. There's certain things that you have absolutely have control over, that you can affect a change in, and you have to decide, do you want to make that change, and what's the best way for you to do that? And then there's other things that are completely out of your control.
Right.
And it's very easy to get concerned with the things that are outside of your control and obsess over those, and not actually be able to do anything about it, and then put you in a very powerless position. So at least at the age I'm at now, I'm pretty good at recognizing that everything over here I have no control over, or it's an uphill battle and it's not worth fighting. But these are the things that I can change, and I really want to think about what direction I want to take it in. And but then it's empowering, because at least you're the one steering the ship. And I think a lot of it is just not letting other people ruin your day,
Right.
and tell you things that make you feel bad.
Right, but then it ultimately doesn't really have much of an impact, other than it might bruise me, like my feelings a little. But if it doesn't really have a impact on the grand scheme of things, it's really pointless.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can even develop to the point where even it doesn't impact you as much, because you just simply learn how to not let it. But that's tough. I mean,
well, I think I'm learning that, speaking about it, it's like it makes sense. But when you really know people, like friends that you've known for a long time, and everybody changes in different ways, and
Sure.
just accepting that that's fine, and you don't have to be friends forever.
Right.
It doesn't mean that you have to, still be friends because, you were great friends, 15, 20 years ago, but
people
it's
grow
okay
apart.
not to, so I think I'm pretty good now. Just I don't need that. Because, high school, I had, a small group of friends, but then whenever I went to college, it was, a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, you changed so much,
so it
right?
Was so I don't know. It makes sense, but sometimes I think a lot of people have difficulty letting that kind of thing go. Not saying that some people are toxic, but sometimes you try to push relationships longer than you really should.
Yeah, it's it's hard to reckon with the change and admit to yourself that we used to be really good friends, but we just don't have that same vibe anymore that where we click. And even in romantic relationships, that happens where it's I think we've all seen those couples where it's been over for 2 years and they're still hanging in there because they just don't know how to end it or know what to do with it, and
they hate being in the same room
as
each other, and it's really awkward. So
I try to there's the way I'd like the world to be and the way I'd like my life to be, and then there's the way it really is. And I've gotten really good at being able to snap my fingers and say, look, for all that you want something to be a certain way, that doesn't make it so. And
I agree completely.
This is your life. This is the situation you're in now, whether you like it or not. I think once you touch base with reality, at least then you can start dealing with it. And in general, I think you find that it's not as bad as maybe you originally thought it was. At least you're on the right playing field to where you can do something.
Yeah, and I think I've found people that, I don't know, I found so many awesome people.
Hey, Matt Klempa's here.
Yay!
Yeah. Matt's we're getting deep into life.
We've been really serious.
Yeah. So we're gonna pause for a second. I'm gonna set up a mic for my man Matt, and he's gonna sit in and hang out for the remainder. And we're gonna get his thoughts on some of this crazy stuff that we're talking about.
We talk about it at home all the time.
Good. I want to sneak peek into the home life. Okay, we'll be back in a second.
All right.
And we're back. Okay, so joining us now is Matt Klempa, and he's Joy's roommate. So what's
I interrupted like a jerk.
No. Listen, when
I messaged you and told you to come.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Well, and when Stephen Moore did the podcast, his cat kept jumping on the table, and we had to stop and let the dog out to pee and everything. And normally, if we weren't outside, I'd have the gain turned up really high because I like to get all the background noise. But people starting up cars and stuff on the last one was a little bit too much background noise. And but in general, we're picking up a little bit of birds chirping. So the point is, the interruptions and that, it's very natural that way, and I like it. So, wow, you got your own Paisley beer coolie there.
Yeah.
You came prepared.
I always have koozies in my purse because I just don't know,
And the girl likes a beer cold.
I do, and he has one, so then that way.
She gave me one with these cats on it. My cat, I'm leaving, and I'm taking my catacorn with me.
Wow.
My dear friend Kelly gave me that, and it's perfect.
That's cute. So what's the most annoying thing about Matt as a roommate? Let's get real. This part one, we talked about serious life issues. Now we're going to have fun and talk about serious
I
Matt
know.
Klempa
It was really
issues.
serious, but it was great.
It was good.
It was great.
It's good to
And now we'll
process
just
those
talk
thoughts.
about Klempa.
Yeah. Why he annoys us? No, we love Matt.
No. I don't know.
It's a good roommate? I bet he's a good roommate. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
Sometimes he says he's going to cut the grass and forget.
Yeah, I do that a lot.
But then we do have a third party, which is my boyfriend. RJ, which he will cut the grass. But he's probably he should probably be here actually, and he probably hates that I'm even talking about him right now. But he's the neatest of all of us. And then I think I don't know, like I'm lower on the spectrum, and then it depends on different things. Maybe we don't really go in his room, so it's okay. We have we have our separate spaces, and it works out nicely.
Yeah.
Actually, but no, he's great. I mean, he doesn't bring any riffraff home, so that's good.
Yeah.
Work on it.
And then
I like
and
riffraff. I like bringing riffraff home.
He loves my animals.
Good.
Which is important to me.
What are your animals?
Cats and dogs.
Okay. How many?
Get ready for this.
2 dogs and 7 cats.
Wow.
It's not like I wanted to be 32 years old.
Crazy cat lady.
And and oh well, I want to have this many cats, but I fostered for a rescue, and then one showed up on the porch, and then I mean, it was just, they just kind of happened,
Yeah.
but I'm definitely done. My boyfriend rolls his eyes at me, but
But it's hard to say no. Like,
it's hard to
when
say.
they're-
Well, the last one just showed up on the porch, and I
Yeah.
tried to find a home for her, and it just didn't work out, and then she just,
No, I
they just
understand.
become a part of your lives, and it's,
I have the exact same problem with motorcycles.
just the way that they look at you. Is
The way they
just,
look at me, they call me and say, I need a home, take me home with you. I mean, I had 7 at one time.
That would
so.
be great if one just showed up on your porch.
Yeah. Although people do show up occasionally with motorcycles saying, would you like to, I heard you occasionally like to buy a motorcycle. This one's for sale. Do you want to buy it? And
Wow, like Ohio Valley Yard Sale comes to you,
yeah.
like to your house.
Well, it's funny when people know that you're game for it. I don't know how many people at work have said, hey, we have this motorcycle in our garage. We haven't ridden it in a couple of years. We're wanting to get rid of it. Would you be interested? And I'm always like, I'm always interested. It's like giving a heroin addict a packet of smack. Don't tempt me with another motorcycle because, that's a weakness.
Yeah.
But I mean, there is no cure and there is no rehab, so you just have to live with it.
Yeah.
That's nice though, that you take care of the cats, and sounds like they needed a home, and so.
Yeah, I'm a complete sucker.
Well,
But some of them are very special. I mean, I volunteer with the Backstreet Cat Rescue, and I fostered.
my friend Beth does too. Beth
Okay.
Gretchen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a couple that I got from there, I ended up keeping. One, he was paralyzed from the waist down. They think
Holy
somebody
shit.
had thrown him out a window as a kitten or whatever. But
Oh.
terrible. So, but he eventually started walking. I mean, I would have to give him a bath every day, and he would like kick his feet in the sink.
Yeah.
And he wanted to play with the other kittens that I was fostering at the time, and he just kind of started using his back legs. He sometimes gets a little wonky and
Yeah.
like walks like he's drunk, and his name's Chance, and I call him my sweet prince. He's like completely blind in one eye and then somewhat blind in the other, just from an eye infection he had as a kitten. So I was like, well, I can't
Yeah.
ever rehome him,
You
and
ever notice
And he
like,
likes me a
He
lot.
like looks at you that you're like, when he looks straight on, it looks like he's squinting too, like he's trying to
he
make
looks
out-
very judgy.
Yeah.
But
It's
he
like-
just literally can't see. It's like not funny at all.
That's nature's
but
way
he's-
of giving him an advantage with his disability, I guess.
But he's in a great spot, and he's pretty happy, and
Yeah.
he's a pretty happy guy.
Once
Follows
again,
me
life
around.
came together at the right time and place
Exactly.
for you and for the kitty.
Yes. All of them.
And you're very lucky to have a roommate and a boyfriend, I guess, that are okay with it, because 7 cats would be a deal breaker for me.
It is. It's not nearly as bad as you think. Like, it doesn't, like, house doesn't smell. We keep
Yeah.
up on it, and everybody's well taken care of. So, I mean, there's a way that people do it that it's really overwhelming and terrible, but we do, I think, a pretty good job where it's, you come in, you won't know that there's that many animals. And they really don't make a mess, other than occasionally they'll rip something off the like fridge, or if we leave out like cardboard boxes or something.
Tear it
Like
up.
sometimes, that might happen, but it's never anything major, and they all get along remarkably well considering there's a lot.
And I hear that just one child can do that much damage in a day too. So
And I don't have any of those.
yeah,
So.
I think more than rip up cardboard boxes. Apparently, they poop in their pants a lot when they're new.
Yeah,
So
that's what I've heard.
Yeah, that's.
I hear they puke without warning.
Yeah, and then they want to
The
get.
animals, I can hear it coming, and then we just run.
That's good.
And then, we know.
Plus,
Who is it? Where is it?
I think if the kids are smart, you have to send them to college, and if they're dumb, you have to take care of them forever. So.
I'd rather have dumb, fuzzy ones that I have to take care of
Yeah,
forever that
yeah.
will love me always.
That's true.
Regardless of anything.
No,
That's good.
And pets are great. They are. I'd love to have a dog. I'm not home enough. My job, it's 12-hour shifts, and when I am not working, I'm not home that often, at least not regularly. So I don't think it would be fair to the little fur ball. But I do think that it's amazing how much pets enrich people's lives, and I've been around some people that, in fact, Stephen Moore, his dog was really cool, and my friend Nestor has 3 dogs, and they're really cool. And whenever I'm around a really cool dog like that, it makes me even want to be around them more. And then my brother's got 2 dogs, which are annoying as fuck.
Yeah.
And I think that would be my luck. I would get these dogs that they haven't charmed me yet, and I don't think that they will.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
Well,
I think I'm like that with people sometimes.
Oh yeah.
The dogs are great. Like
they are.
Moonshine and
Katya.
God.
Their dynamic is great.
And Katya is like a source of entertainment for like if you're bored. Like
she's a clown.
Yeah,
she's a husky, and she I got her on Craigslist whenever I lived around the Pittsburgh area. She was $100, and they were just getting rid of her. She was an older puppy, and they just said that she was too much. But I mean, they were letting her. She is a bit much, but she's really good for a husky.
Yeah.
Like, she is not incredibly destructive. She's not super high energy. Like, she does pretty well. But I had Moonshine before her, who's a lazy dog. She's only like 5, but she is like, she acts like this like old, like just chill. Katya will have conversations with you.
Yeah.
And if we were at our house right now, she would be, she'd probably want a microphone and would be, you know, talking to you, and would come up to you and just start kind of yelling at you, like, why aren't you
paying attention to me?
And she speaks with like intent almost. It's not like she's just barking at nothing. She'll be looking at you like thinks she's telling you something.
That's funny.
And then we just kind of like make fun of it and laugh and, like, you know, entertain her and everything, but it's like she'll walk away and sigh like,
yeah.
These fucking people don't know what I'm trying to tell them. What a waste of time. And then she just...
That's funny.
It's funny, but...
So they developed... I noticed that if you're around certain pets long enough, you do see their little personalities start to poke out. And some dogs are dicks. And some are really nice. And I mean...
These ones, they're wonderful. I'm really, really lucky.
Yeah.
They're great, great dogs.
I had a dog for a while, a boxer girlfriend. We lived together, and we adopted a basically full-grown boxer. It was like 9 months old. It was, I think, 60 pounds. I guess it wasn't completely full-grown, but it was a big dog. It was 65 pounds of meat, and when it hit, you could knock you over.
Those are big dogs, yeah.
And it was unruly, and we had to go to obedience school, and I mean, I really loved it, and I really liked the process of getting him to calm down and to be obedient, and it taught me a lot about human nature and just the nature of things, of being consistent and
classical conditioning and being able to, you know, if you want to reward a desired behavior, make sure that you you know,
one of the biggest things
pay attention to it.
They taught me is that you only give a command once and then they do it. And you know, so there was a thing where you tuck the tail to make them sit, and it was fun. This big meaty dog thought that he was the king of the household, and the guy, I call it dog school. Mm-hmm. the teacher at dog school said, you got to let him know that you're in charge some way. So what I would do is I would come home from work and ignore him and change into like my crappiest clothing, and then I'd come flying down the stairs and we would wrestle until I could pin him on the ground. I mean, I never hurt him. He's a boxer.
Yeah.
Then I would pin him on the ground, and
just
I got
established a sort of dominance.
Yeah, and it took like probably 6 weeks to the point where I could get him to lay on the ground, and I could go in the kitchen and make a sandwich and stand there over top of him and eat the sandwich, and then I'd say okay, and he'd get up and you know, of course you kind of feel bad about that, but at the same time, he didn't mind. He was, once he knew his place in the family, so it was me, him, and then my girlfriend. So when I wasn't at home, he would just be crazy running across the dirty dishes on the sink and everything, and I'd come home, I'm like, get down, and I wouldn't have to even yell. I'm like, come on, you know you can't act like that.
I think mine listen pretty well, and they're pretty good with I mean, they certainly beg. Moonshine will come up and like slowly grab something off your plate if you're not watching.
Yeah,
she'll do it real slow,
which is
and
kind
then
of
just
entertaining.
Kind of slink away, and it's just like you know, and then it's like we can't even do anything. Yeah. It's like, Moonshine, what did you, but they're pretty good. I'll growl at them sometimes. And then Katya rolls on her back and then just, like.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had any problems. Like, never.
No, and they're nice. They don't bite. They, like, mouth a little bit playing, like Katya does, but, I mean, they're great. They're great around, like, little kids and everything, too. Like, they're just really good dogs. I don't know. I had them both since they were young, but I did take them to puppy school, but it was later. Like, they were a little older. After they were older,
yeah.
And that was just kind of a fun thing for us to do together, and we'd get ice cream at Dairy Queen afterwards because it was, like, on the way home. And I took them each, like I did moonshine, and then Katya went second. And I just kind of liked that time together. And they were pretty good at it, but...
Yeah. You pick up some skills probably that it helped. And
I liked them learning things that they kind of already knew, but doing it around other dogs, because that's, like, they're really interested and curious about other dogs and want to be friends, but, like, I need them to focus and not be, you know.
Oh, especially
they're still terrible at that. I have not kept up with their studies, but
well,
they have that piece of paper though. That's pretty much all you need to do.
They get
right?
their diploma.
They've got their diploma, so now it's just their experience, I guess, that they have to work on to get employed.
My funniest boxer story was I came home from work one day and Max, that was his name. He had gotten out, and I get out of my car, and I look up the sidewalk, and there's this big chunk of meat just running towards me with these big fangs hanging out, and it just happened so quickly, and I think we had him about 6 weeks, maybe 2 months, but for a second there, I was like primal. I did not even recognize that was my dog. I jumped up onto the hood of the car and then up onto the roof, and I'm staying on the roof of my car, my dog's barking at me, and I'm like, wait a minute. That's my dog. And I got off. I'm like, hey, Max, come on. He was just running up to say hi to me, but all I saw was animal, teeth, muscle, fur, just charging at me, and it scared the crap out of me. Like, tell me that's your own dog.
That story you told about the showing you're the alpha.
The alpha,
it reminded me of the John Mulaney, the comedian.
Yes.
John Mulaney has
he's funny.
He has a bit where he talks about like him and his wife adopted a dog, and like it was like this really bad dog, so they took it to someone. They're like, you gotta show that you're the alpha male in the house. And so he would like do stuff, and then he's like,
probably between him and his wife, he's not the alpha male.
Yeah, and then but then he was like, I come home, and my wife is like pan frying a steak, and he's like, I think it's gonna be for me, and then she like throws it on the dog's plate, and then she just like makes me macaroni and cheese.
John Mulaney is very funny. And
he's one of my favorites. Yeah.
He's a great comedy writer as well.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen him with Nick Kroll?
Yes.
Oh, too much tuna. Have you ever seen the skit they did on Kroll Show?
Yeah. Oh, I love that show.
Oh, me too. Highly underrated as far as I'm concerned.
I really like the old and new money.
Yes.
That they did. I thought it was genius. Really. I mean, it was just how different they acted, and
they are very funny.
Like the new money was like complete, or the old money was like complete douchebags, and the new money was like, I mean, still ostentatious in their own right, but it was kind of It was interesting. It's like, I know people exactly like that, actually.
Well, I think that the best comedy is when
rooted in reality.
Yeah, that's rooted in reality. They're pointing out something in society that we all kind of notice, but they put their finger on it in a way that kind of sums it up and neatly. And that, and I like quotes, because I think quotes, if they're done properly, they take a grand, complicated idea and they can kind of boil it down into
something that everybody could really
understand, and palatable in the most simplest form. Now, in some cases, like internet memes, where they take a big problem and they think that they can solve it with a quote and a picture of a former president or a current president, I think those are bad for society, because they get people thinking, oh yeah, all you got to do is blah 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 and the problem's solved, and that's not the case.
Well, it's also important to actually read things other than those and understand exactly what what does that mean, and do I actually agree with that, because it may mean something that you don't. I mean, and it's easy to share something, but it's good to look at
well,
everything else as well.
I think that more and more people don't peel back the next layer of the onion, let alone the next 5 or 6, to where you start to really get to know a certain issue. And one of the things that disturbs me lately is that the idea that if somebody has an opinion different of yours, then now they're an enemy. Where I think that it should be okay to have a different opinion. It should also be okay to express it and then have discourse. And so if people get to the point where they're afraid to say what's on their mind, because every idea has, even a good idea has some problems in it, and every bad idea might have a little bit of merit in it. But anytime that you're shutting down the exchange of ideas, you're screwing yourself.
Well, then also it doesn't open a door for anybody to talk to you. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I have some relatively conservative friends, and one of them calls me his favorite liberal, and I kind of like it because I don't necessarily care. Like, we don't have to talk politics or whatever, but then I also, just in general, I don't want anyone thinking that, I do lean more liberally, but that doesn't mean that I never want to have a conversation with you, or that I dislike you, or that I think you're a complete moron or anything. Like, I don't think that's how things will really change or work if we continuously put down someone that disagrees with us. But I like to kind of cultivate an environment like, well, let's safely talk about these things where I'm not gonna like put you down and be a jerk to you because you feel that way. I want to know why, and then I want to be able to say my opinion as well.
Sure.
And I just don't think that ever really happens. And
not much.
Yeah.
I
don't know. We'll see.
More and more, I avoid the label for myself as far as being liberal or conservative, and just because I think that what happens a lot of times, especially now more than ever, that if you subscribe to a certain label or identity, then you almost have to buy into everything. And so if you did have a conservative viewpoint, then you would be a bad liberal. And no, you're just a person who has a device.
Just conventionally, I am more liberal just because, for the sake of conversation. But it's like, when I think a lot of people have different opinions kind of all over the place, I think it's like almost impossible to really say that you're completely one thing or I mean, and then I think one person will bastardize a mode of thought for everyone, and that doesn't mean that you're exactly like that.
Right.
Not all conservatives are Donald Trump.
That's true. Well, right.
I don't think most are actually, but I mean, not all liberals are, whatever,
And even to the point where if you were not a Barack Obama supporter, but you liked certain ideas of his, that
you should be able to say
you shouldn't be a traitor to your party because
I agree.
and so that's why for me more and more I try to keep as open-minded and not label myself as anything and just consider whatever idea comes up and
I haven't even necessarily said that like, oh yeah, I'm liberal, but if anybody's friends with me on Facebook, they just know.
Well,
but, so they, but
certainly,
I understand what you're saying.
And I think that people that know me, I probably would be described that way if based on my beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd certainly there's some liberal thoughts that I don't like, and there's certain conservative ideas that I can kind of make a little bit of sense to me. I'm kind of over the whole PC thing. Can get out of hand at times, and because I think it limits people. And I was listening to a podcast the other day where there's a college, and I probably shouldn't even talk about it because I don't know enough about it, but it's basically politically...
You gave a disclaimer that you're not...
Yeah.
You're good.
But politically correctness had run amok to the point where it was going in the opposite direction, so it was kind of creating the problem that it was trying to avoid. And oftentimes, so basically what they were saying was that it had to do with racial issues, and they were expanding the the definition of racism so far that this professor, who was a big advocate for equality and was pretty well known for being a leader for that, but because he disagreed with something that a group was doing, they labeled him a racist. And he made a good point. He said they broadened the definition of racist enough so that it would include him, but then once he was labeled that, everything negative under the old, more stricter version of the term was applied to him. So all of a sudden he was demonized, and he had to take his family out of this little college town because people were wanting to attack him. Here's a good guy that had a very good history of being for equality and doing the right things, and to the point where I guess they had the dean of the school held hostage, and he couldn't go to the bathroom without one of the student protesters escorting him, and I don't know, those things can get out of hand. I know, like, comedians will not play college campuses anymore because you have to watch what you say so much. And I understand when you're young, you get that first sense of power, and I don't know, maybe because I'm old, but there's definitely words that can hurt people, and if you use them that way, that's wrong. But there's other times when, especially if a comedian's making a joke, usually whatever topic it is, if it offends somebody, the point of the joke is it's pointing out the hypocrisy of the issue, or it's pointing out that there's a problem with that issue. Right. So they might be joking about a certain subject, but they're not making fun of the people. They're in a larger context, the joke is actually pointing out a wrong in the world, but people don't see that that's not the person's personal belief, that they're making a point. And
right.
It just happens to be funny.
Well, I think that, like, political correctness has gotten, I think that it can be completely blown out of proportion. Yeah. So I don't know anything about the specific thing you were talking about, but in general, it can be blown out of proportion. Yeah, but it's good. I get what you're throwing down a bit. But I think, though, that it has gotten so blown out of proportion that people don't take it seriously at all. But how I view it, and I mean, not like I have all the answers by any means, but I think that there's certain ways to do something. Like, so if I'm going to say this and it's going to affect the dignity or humanity of another person, right, then that is important to pay attention to. Also, you can be honest, but also tactful. Right. Because I really feel like honesty without tact can be cruel. Right. And it's not necessary to do that, and it causes more problems. Right. So whenever I think of political correctness, like, for me, now sometimes I am not tactful. You catch me on a bad day. I am swearing like a trucker, or, I don't know. But is that politically correct? Did I just offend like a bunch of truckers right now? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? No. But, like, you don't want to have to be worried about that.
I don't think the truckers give a shit. Right.
They're cool. I'm probably friends with them.
Yeah.
but like I just think that political correctness can be blown out of proportion that way, but I do think that we should still pay attention to it.
It's a fine.
Yeah, it gets really nebulous because one thing may not offend me, but would offend someone else. But then, but for me, I just think, well, is it going to affect their, like, dignity as a person and out of respect? Yeah. Like, you have to treat people with respect as well. And
I think that the intent follows the bullet, and if you can certainly say certain words to somebody in a context where you're trying to hurt their feelings, and that's obviously 100% wrong. And then there's the thing that you might say that they're interpreting it wrong, and that's kind of the way of the world. Once you throw something out there, the way the world interprets it, you just have to live with it.
It's tough.
But there's other times when I think that people. They like the gotcha, that they just...
The gotcha media. My Sarah Palin impression is really bad, but I gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, a comedian or just a person says something in an article.
One thing, and it can just ruin their entire lives.
Well, a friend of mine, he posted something on Facebook, and he was joking around, obviously, and then somebody was taking a piss out of him. So it had something to do with women. I don't know what it was, but it was a joke. And it wasn't even, but so you're saying that women can't do this? And he's like, no, that's not what I'm saying. and I think that they were enjoying that they got him. That we got you saying something, and now we're going to you're a bad person because if he's a bad person, and I point out that I'm a good person, and that I don't like, and I also don't like if people being offended on behalf of somebody else who's not there. So if we're having,
I think there's like an adrenaline like to it.
Yeah.
There's an adrenaline that really like gets you going. I mean, just personally, you know, when you just start talking about something and getting, you know, like we were just talking about, you know, old friendships and stuff earlier. It's like, well, I start, you know, dwelling on something and then thinking about it a lot, and then I get real, you know, I don't really think exactly what I'm doing, but I'm just reacting off of like my feeling, and it's a high almost, like for, I think, just how people react to certain things. And I don't know, I feel like, I don't know, that's just kind of how I look at it sometimes.
I guess for me, you know, if you're having a conversation with another dude and they go, that's offensive towards women, I'm like, well, fuck are you? You're not a woman. Who are you to speak for that? If a woman hears that and they tell me they're offensive, then I'll probably tell them I don't care because I didn't mean to be offensive or whatever. Because in my heart, I don't think I would. It's not in my nature to be offensive. And if I am being offensive or mean, God damn it, I'm doing it on purpose. And there's no you're catching me in anything that I wouldn't openly admit to. So I don't think I don't leave myself open for too many gotchas where I'm going to slip and say something that I didn't mean. Either I didn't mean it that way, and or damn it, I did mean it. But please don't be offended on behalf of somebody else that isn't there. If they want to be offended, you can go tell them that I said that, and they can come talk to me if they're offended, if you want to take it that far. But because oftentimes what you find is they're like, no, that's silly. Why would I be offended at that? You know, and
I mean, there's certainly some things that have really crossed the line where I've definitely intervened and said, like, you need to not. I mean, just like throwing around certain words that are really, really, really offensive and making everyone feel awkward or something, and everybody's complaining about it and not really saying anything, or, you know, I mean, there's certain situations that I think, but in no way am I a warrior in saying like,
that's what
like, I'm not censoring everyone. I mean, there's certain situations where it's like, hey man, like that's just really actually terrible.
And by warrior, you mean social justice warrior? Is that the term that you're
not?
Or the term?
I'm really into social justice. However, I'm not like trying to censor everyone all the time. Right. And I think it's really hard to be authentic with anyone if you're censoring someone and condemning them like every time they say something.
I agree. Where you're overly looking for them to
never.
That's,
Never.
And I think if something strikes a chord with you, it's all right to see something or you hear something to say something.
But if you're, you know, like a PC bro, then
PC principal.
I don't know if
PC principal. Have you watched South Park like within the past couple of years?
No, but I could kind of get where you're going.
Well, it's pretty great.
It's a pretty witty show,
And the principal that comes in, spoiler alert if anyone hasn't watched it, he's PC principal, and he's like a real like kind of like frat bro kind of guy, like stereotypical, and then there's like a literal frat of all these guys and they're PC, and they're like, bro, that's not cool, and like literally everything you do he's like, that's not PC, bro, and just constantly corrects everyone, and then everyone's just like really irritated by it, and so it's kind of a fun parody of exactly what we're talking about.
An extreme example of it. And there are certain people where you feel like, man, I got to watch what I say around this person because they're going to jump your shit for every little thing you say. And to me, I'm thinking, in my heart, I got no problem with anybody. So
I feel the same way. It's like, I mean, let them really. I mean,
I like to cut up.
I'd rather talk about other things. Like,
that's how I usually am at a bar when people bring up like politics.
That stuff.
It's tough around here sometimes because clearly I disagree with a lot of people. But
if you're talking about like avoiding subjects like that, for me, I like to joke around, and I don't think that there's any topic that's off topic, and especially amongst my close friends, I like off-color humor. I like absurdity, and you know, even to the point where, like, what do you think of my new shoes? I'm like, dude, those are gay. That doesn't have.
I'm not talking about stuff like that. I'm talking about like people of another race or less than, like, or something like that kind of stuff I really don't like.
Okay.
But that's like a completely different thing that we're talking
Right.
about. And literally saying that less than, not like, I mean, just, yeah. Yeah.
Let me ask you a question, because this came up on the podcast, and it is an interesting question. Can a minority be a racist?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Matt?
I would say no. Just only because of the operational definition of racism is people who hold a certain power using that power to
Well,
oppress.
yeah. If we go with that definition, then I would agree with
That's how I
Matt.
kind of look at
Because I think, I guess if you took it as the strict definition, perhaps. Although I think that I guess it comes down to your definition of racist, right? Because
which would be subjective. Like with that definition, then yes, I would completely agree with you.
Yeah.
Completely.
I guess if it
because apparently, Cubans may not like Mexicans or whatever like that.
Yes,
so within different.
Yeah. So I guess in that sense,
context, and
in that context, maybe in the context of.
Well, then also,
if you're a minority but you hate the majority, does that make you a racist? If you're from the minority but you just hate everybody from the majority, isn't that?
Well, I mean, our country's so big. I mean, you could.
Yeah. So.
I mean.
I think it's hard.
I spent some time in Camden, New Jersey, where I'm definitely a minority. Yeah. I mean, clearly, I was there doing service stuff and working in different nonprofits and everything. So it's a completely different situation. But I mean, I don't know.
I think it's rough in this in this country, at least. Yeah. Like the United States, it's rough to say to answer that question honestly, where there's so many people and there's so many. If you were in South Africa, you'd be like, well, okay. I would answer differently if we lived there. But
I guess it. I don't really have an answer either. I think it definitely comes down to your definition of racism, and if it's you have a blanket dislike or hatred of another group of people, that's one definition. But then the other definition is a minority majority thing that's kind of different. So here's another thought, and this is something I think I maybe mentioned it when Sarah Clark was on, but I have a very firm belief that nobody has to like you. Nobody has to approve of your lifestyle.
Yeah.
Nobody has to approve whether it's even that you eat junk food. I'm not talking about gay and straight or anything. I'm just talking about whatever you like, country music. Nobody has to like you, and so
nobody has to like the fact that I'm probably going to call Later Gator and ask them to bring me another beer.
There you go.
Well, I remember,
you can step out. I mean, it's free.
I guess
free
you could, be alone with Matt.
Yeah.
I remember when I was doing student teaching. I remember I had the first time I ever got observed. The teacher who was doing the observation, my advisor, he told me he was like, he's like, not everyone likes you, and you don't have to make them like you.
Yeah.
Especially with students, that's really rough.
Yeah, and that is your thing. You're like, I want all these students to like me.
Right.
That is your thing. But
I should say the second part of it before we get too far.
Oh yes.
But you have to treat each other with dignity and respect. So,
I agree.
So the point where you're feeling towards someone causes you to treat them differently, then you're wrong. But as far as nobody has to accept the things that you do, and I think where we run into problems is if people try to force that, or
well, that's what even that advice he gave me, I always thought that was great. He didn't say not everyone has to like you. He said not everyone likes you. He made a point not everyone likes you as a person.
Yeah.
Which is
probably it's true. Not everyone. Anyone that would really like everyone, they're probably a little mental, right?
I definitely really don't like some people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's normal.
I've thought about that.
And I don't really, I have people that do like me, so I think about that more than, if there's people that don't, I don't know. I just don't really care.
There are people that I don't like, and I definitely don't treat them right? But
I just leave them alone.
I try to, and I'm working on that, and I try not to be a mean person, and in general, I don't think I'm too much of an asshole, but there's some times where I just don't like a person.
This is our first time hanging out. I don't know.
Yeah.
So far, I think you're nice.
Well, I think in general, actually, I was in this conversation yesterday. I said, overall, I think I'm a pretty nice person, but there was certainly some people who would disagree, and I said, screw them. Because they're probably not very nice people either. Like, they, for the most part, I find that I get along with good people, and I don't have much tolerance for people that are shitheads. So I generally tend to think that if someone would say that they don't like me, they're probably a shithead. But could be wrong. It could be me.
What's wrong with them?
Yeah. What's wrong with them? They don't see that I'm a great person.
I actually feel the same way.
Yeah.
Because I talk to, and I feel like unless I'm just completely oblivious, but I feel like I hang around with and talk to all kinds of different people, and we get along really well, and I don't know. I just can't believe that.
Now, if you catch me,
if anyone legit doesn't like me, other than there's some people I know they wouldn't, but that's probably because I really let them have it, or
maybe it's just
or maybe I was a
oil
dick,
water.
because sometimes I am a dick.
Yeah. Well,
that's okay.
You catch anybody on the wrong day, and they can be an asshole. If I've had one beer and stop, I'm cranky. If I'm too hungry, I'm cranky. If I don't get enough sleep, I'm cranky. And when I'm cranky, I can be an ass. Or if I'm driving a car.
The day I broke my arm, and I don't know who this woman is, but she came into work, and I came back to work after I had my x-rays and everything, and had the cast, a half, splint thing on or whatever. And she goes, and I was pissed about this, because I was like, man, I'm finally not, sick. I got over my mono stuff. I got over all this stuff, and then I fall, and then I broke my arm, and I'm just, pissed in general. I come back, and she's like, oh, did you hurt your arm? And I was like, no, I'm wearing this for fucking fun. I didn't say that. I did not say that. I did not.
But I
just looked at her, and I was like, yeah, I did. And then just went upstairs. It was just really, because and it, kind of hurt. And so, and I refuse to take any medicine because I just don't like to. And unless it's unbearable and I can't handle it, I just don't want to take it. But so I was kind of salty to her. But a little situation like that, just a little situation, if you're in the spotlight all the time, can just create a view of yourself that is not intentional.
Right.
And so I try not to do that to people, because I just know, it's well, maybe they were having a bad day.
Yeah.
So I like to believe that people are inherently good.
If you have ever seen the movie Crash,
which one?
Not the one where people enjoy car crashes.
Yes, I was wondering. Have you seen that?
Yes, it's
wow.
This is totally
this is stuff that we talk about.
I'm gonna hijack it. I'm gonna sidebar here. But when we were in college, we had I was part of a group called the Unidentified Film Organization, because we couldn't get an actual club designation because we weren't an actual club. But so we had joked around about when Crash came out and everyone loved it.
Yeah.
We had joked around about
the one with all the famous people.
Yeah. And we joked around about putting up all these flyers advertising that, hey, we're going to show this. And then they get there, and we're showing the other Crash.
The other Crash.
Where people are really into scars and injuries. But that the Crash about different kinds of racism and things is good too.
I think it's a powerful movie, because the people at the beginning of the movie, you kind of have the baddies and the goodies, and it's a role reversal by the end, and you see that even Matt Dillon's character, when he's taking care of his father, spoiler alert, is really a good guy. So you see that there's good and evil in everybody.
Right.
And for me, that was one of the most important movies I've ever seen, because it really reminded me that I'm not any different than anybody else. I'm just as fallible, and you try to be on the side of good more often than bad, but everybody has a moment.
Right. Everybody has a thing. Everybody, no one's perfect. There's never a time where someone didn't do something bad or was offensive or acted in their own interest more than someone else. Or, it's just normal, and to condemn people constantly for that is well, unless you're great.
Carl Jung, he would say that.
He's my favorite.
He would say that that recognizing that in the depths at which you you have that in you is important in your development, and once you face that, you become a much better person. And so, as much as I don't like, I can admit that, man, I have the capacity to be a real asshole sometime.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I think the person that I am tries to be nice and wants everybody to be happy and do well, and but don't piss me off.
I understand.
Yeah.
I think a lot of my friends know that too, because which Klempa knows, once I start going on something and I am like not happy, it is just like, you might be hearing about it for days, and when you think it's over, a couple months later, it's going to come up again, and I'm going to be mad. Is that like...
Mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. Matt's in the kitchen doing the dishes just so that when she comes home, there's nothing to complain about.
I'm like,
no, but it's like, not necessarily like anything with them, but just like something else. Like, I mean, not with them. Like,
Give
we
you a
have
wide
a pretty, like...
Good dynamic,
Yeah, we have a great dynamic, like in the house and stuff.
He said good, you said great.
I
sense tension. No, I'm kidding.
It's good. It's great. Yeah,
we
actually,
it works really well. Like, I mean,
and we pick up like, I like it because everyone picks up like, it's not, we don't have like delegated tasks.
Yeah.
But everyone like
everybody pitches in.
Yeah, everyone like picks up like, oh, I noticed this thing. Like, I'm gonna do this, and like, I'm gonna notice this. I'm gonna do this. Like.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Definitely living under the same roof if everybody's
RJ
looking out for each other.
Though, like if he does actually
he
listen,
pulls the most weight.
he really does, and he is wonderful, and he is
really
more.
is.
He knows he's more particular about things, but he really does a great job.
Well, that's the burden
He's
of
like,
the.
I think he's like the. I don't know.
The mom.
Yeah. Am I the dad?
That's the burden.
And then this is our adult son.
Yeah, I'm like a weird uncle.
That's the burden of being the. That's the burden
Uncle
of being.
Crummy.
Yeah, I'm like Uncle Joey or something.
Uncle Crummy, that story's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm like Uncle Joey or Uncle Jesse on Full House.
Uncle Jesse because you have a band.
Yeah, I guess I'm not as cool as Uncle Jesse.
You just need to find a Becky. It'd be great.
Not as cool as Uncle Jesse.
I
don't know the Beach Boys.
It's the hair, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't know the Beach Boys. That's
I don't
true.
know the Beach Boys.
You could.
You need to have the mullet.
Man, yeah.
I definitely think that there's a certain burden of being the neatest person in a living situation. I mean, it's always going to fall on you because you're like, I can't go to sleep with these dishes. I have to do them.
He really should be here because he would totally be like, yes, that's exactly what
I got some justification.
Yeah.
But
I tried.
Well, he can listen in.
He
Actually,
can come in.
this is better. It's recorded it'll be on the internet for everybody to hear you guys admit that
he's great.
Yeah. He can play this back.
Sometimes we kind of make fun of him a little bit because he does little silly things. But
no, there was something this is the most recent. Which he knows that I think is kind of funny because it was ridiculous. But he was having a bad night, so it was like just unfortunate. He was at the house and the cats were being dicks, and one of them broke like a bracelet he had, and like all the beads fell off. And I wasn't home yet because I was out. And
we were out together.
Spice, yeah. I don't remember what we were doing that night, but it was fun. We have similar interests in like things that we go and do, and so we just end up doing that stuff. So we were out, and then RJ had left this bag, and I guess like Spice, who's like the sweetest little angel, although she does have like some jerk tendencies, but she's wonderful. And she's tiny for being an adult, but I guess she scratched him and ripped his bracelet off, and then he put it in this bag, and like the bag had his blood on it because I guess she scratched him too, and then he wrote on it, "Thanks, Spice," like just and he wanted me to see it whenever I came home, just to like if anything could get any worse, it did, because she broke my bracelet, and and then there was like this bag with blood on it that says like "Thanks, Spice," and so for the last like week or so we've been like, "Thanks, Spice." Just, like, it is funny, although I did feel really bad that like they were just just one thing after another, they were just kind of like getting into things and spilling things, and and so he was dealing with it, but that was like the last straw. But that's kind of like a funny thing where we just kind of like
that
laugh
is
about some stuff. And we also say he's really old, but he's only like 2 years older than us. It's not like maybe a year and a half of me. I don't know. I think we have like similar maturity a little bit, but we, like sometimes I'll be like, well, babe, you wouldn't understand this because you're like way older than me. But he's really, and he's like, I am not. I'm like, I know you're not, but like, so like just in jest and nothing like, really anything.
We should point out that the three of us have known each other for over 10 years.
Oh,
now.
wow.
Yeah.
So you're
like
all
14 years.
Yeah, 14
almost,
years.
yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So.
We went to college. All three of us.
That's
same
RJ
friend group.
was his RA.
Yeah, the same friend group. We all hung out together.
And I was dating a guy on their hallway at the time, and so he was kind of my first RA as well.
Yeah.
Stole him away.
Because
Stole you.
Well, 11 years later, because we were friends for all that time.
Yeah.
And then,
I was just
and then he eventually asked me out.
I was just thinking about that because we were watching the new Twin Peaks. And I was like, I watched, the first time I saw Blue Velvet was I watched it with RJ and like Pat.
Yeah.
Because then we kept yelling the Pabst Blue Ribbon.
Oh,
thing.
right.
Like, that was like where we found out about Pabst Blue Ribbon.
That movie, that one line in that movie probably sold a shit ton of beer.
But it was. Now I'm watching the new Twin Peaks with RJ again, so it's like
full circle.
Yeah,
weird
that's cool.
David Lynch.
Well, there's something, and I like you guys were saying how you kind of have the inside jokes and where you, what was the saying with the cat? Thanks.
Thanks, Spice.
Thanks, Spice. I love having inside
you
jokes with
name
your friends.
the entire podcast that.
Thanks, Spice.
No, don't. But like it is just funny. Like randomly, like I'll just be, I don't know, for no reason, just thanks, Spice. Or just, because he was real salty. But, like, Spice doesn't know what the hell's going on.
Right.
She's a cat with a brain the size of a walnut.
It's
like
this is a running joke now. Yeah. Well, I have this.
Thanks, Obama.
I have this joke with my friend Janet at work where we go, now get. And it's amazing how many things that'll work with them. Like, hey, I need you to order some of these supplies and then take that linen around. Now get.
Yeah.
It's just perfectly.
It's applicable to, like, so many things once you know.
Yeah,
but it is
you mentioned another one, the crummy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny how much those inside jokes help a friend group bond. And for friendships, I think it's important. And I've heard the theory that friendships are usually based on a similar sense of humor. And I've found that to be true.
Yeah.
The people that I'm
that's about right.
my best friends, the people I feel the most comfortable around, are the people that we have the same sense of humor, and especially for me, since I think that if you're joking around, you can joke around about anything. I don't think anything's off limits, and so I have a few friends that I can say anything around, and they know that I'm joking around, and they also find it very hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I like to laugh, and I like the absurdity, and I like saying the thing that you're like, oh my God, I can't believe you just said that.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah, I think you and I are really kind of cynical and sarcastic, and we really, like jab a little more.
Well, I've said before, I think Corrine's like the sister. I'm like another sister or something sometimes. Like it's we both have red hair.
That's a compliment
both,
where I come from.
Yeah, we're both, But we would have similar like taste and similar like sense of humor about like everything really. But,
like just seemingly nothing will be funny to anyone else, but we'll just start laughing about something like
rosé,
dumb or
like,
oh my God, can we? Okay, maybe we should.
We both like bad reality TV.
Yeah,
we're both.
I don't really know why, but it's just kind of like a bad accident where it's like, well, I know this is terrible, but I really want to see what's going on, and that's how I feel about shows like Vanderpump Rules, and then they have a spin-off Summer House, which may be having a second season. I'm not sure now. We also like 90 Day Fiance a lot.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with any of these.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm not even sure how to describe. 90 Day Fiance is like people that are marrying someone on a visa, and then so they have 90 days like on that
to decide
visa
whether
to
they're
decide
going to
whether
marry
or
them.
not they're going to,
Yeah.
and the stories are ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know, but it's just kind of mindless entertainment, but it's hilarious. On one of the shows, they're obsessed with rosé.
Oh.
Obsessed with it. And we don't really understand why, but they, like, different episodes are titled, like, No Way Rosé. And, like, it's just, like, all these puns of rosé, and it's so dumb that it's hilarious. But we also like watching, like, purposefully bad, like, well, not purposefully bad movies, but well,
bad movies,
some
yeah,
of them, yeah.
yeah.
But we really enjoy those things as well. So I think a lot of watching this is kind of in the same vein.
Yeah.
Like, this is so terrible that it's comedic, and it's so ridiculous.
Well, I think a lot of times especially, I used to watch them back in the day, The Real World, and with all the ones on VH1, the Celebrity, what was the one where the...
Did you ever watch Flavor of Love?
Oh.
Flavor of Love, yeah.
Yes!
So,
Good one, yeah.
Valentine's Day, they had they usually have a marathon of it.
Oh, nice.
Just so you know, put it on your calendar.
That's one where RJ has like an encyclopedic knowledge of like.
Yes, he does.
Flavor of Love?
He really,
Flavor of Love. Yeah, I don't think he likes the rest of the stuff we watch, but he's like.
No, he does. Although he did watch Summer House, we made him.
Yeah.
Well, those
He
shows
made
are...
He's tolerant of it. I think.
Yeah.
Those shows are oddly addictive for some reason.
Yeah.
And
Well, he'll hate it, but then he'll be like, "Wait, who is that saying that?" And he'll
Well,
want to know, like,
Yeah.
were you see, so.
And there's a reason why. It's because they're very cleverly edited. And we were talking about people being good and bad, and that kind of brings that point around that on those reality shows, the ones where they follow people around 24 hours a day, you follow anybody around for 24 hours a day, you can edit somebody to be the villain if you catch them.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's what like The Real World, which was the first one, once you decide who's going to be the villain, you can kind of pick out the 6 minutes, because you figure it's a half-hour show and there's 6 people, so you get about 6 minutes of airtime per character. So anybody can be a dick for
You'll
6
be able to splice together anything to make them seem,
and you can make somebody else seem like the sweetie, and it's definitely, I think that the term reality TV is it's anything but. I mean, it's
Fake news.
non-scripted, maybe, but
fake reality.
Yeah. I do like a lot of the reality-based shows to the point where they start manufacturing drama. When I'm talking about the ones where it's, maybe the Ice Road Truckers or the people that live in Alaska or any of those shows.
Oh.
I used to enjoy those a lot more until you notice where they're building in drama or they're
Or, like,
editing in drama.
Bear Grylls.
Yeah.
Like some of the, it's like, well, he was going across this like seemingly type of ravine that he was using like some rock or whatever, and they showed like the clip of that, but then somebody else just like pans like there's a highway right there and then there's a hotel over there.
Yeah.
And it was like, I mean, dude, you just literally stood there and like drank your own pee for like no reason.
Yeah.
I'm
Storage
sure you
Wars
could go
was a lot like that too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But that shows.
Yup.
Yeah.
Yep. That show, I haven't watched it. I don't have cable for the last
I watched
3 or
that
4
at the
years.
beginning, but man, it's just gotten like...
I liked Barry.
It's too much.
And once
I
Barry
love
left.
Barry.
And what's
He has his own show now.
He does.
Yes, he
See,
does.
I don't have cable anymore. And then who's the
He's-
couple, Jared and...
the one that they own
baby.
like a pawn shop or something.
Jared's such an asshole, but she's so pretty. Cute. And she
Well,
has dresses.
no, but Dave Hester got real mad about that
Yeah,
because
he
they said
exposed
that the show
everything.
bought her boobs and that he didn't also get compensated or something.
Well, he was
It's
an
like,
ass too.
And that they planted all the top level stuff in the.
Well, yeah, and I think when the show first came out, it was a little bit more authentic. But then you can't. They have to find cool stuff, otherwise
right,
you're not going to have any
or it would be
content.
really like boring.
I
Yeah.
don't know,
But
well-
Barry has his like own show and stuff now. But I just thought he was.
Barry was cool.
He's just doing his own thing, and he's got money, and he's like, a nice guy. He'll talk to anybody.
Yeah.
I'm like, I think if I saw him somewhere, he would totally talk to me.
I think when
Like,
we were
he's
talking.
nice.
90 Day Fiance when we were like, but when we first started watching it, there were like a few couples that we like we were like heavily invested in.
Yeah.
And we
Like,
were just talking about that the other day because one of them got divorced, and we were like, this is like,
Yeah.
we were like, but they were like,
Yeah,
they were good people.
Chelsea and Ymir.
Yeah, they were.
Ymir is from Nicaragua, and he was in a Nicaragua.
Yeah, he was like,
And he was like a pop star down there, and like she met him, and
Nice.
yeah, but didn't work out.
I followed her on like Twitter, and she's like this super liberal like activist.
Chelsea, if
Wow.
you're listening, you should come to Wheeling.
Well, another
But
thing.
but like there was another one that was from like Pennsylvania. We were like super heavily invested in like
Well,
for some reason 90 Day Fiance.
Another thing that those shows do, and kind of as a filmmaker, I noticed, is they put in like these weird sound effects that dun dun dun, and you don't even notice that they're there unless somebody points them out. But there's a couple of good YouTube videos where they kind of break it down and they show the scene with it and then without it, and just these little, and it makes somebody sound like they just
fascinating, really, like how it can just really, you know.
that they're very clever in what they choose to show, and then the way they add music and sound effects to make something seem more serious. Or someone will make a comment, and if they do the little doing, it sounds like it's a dumb comment, or they'll say something and then
Yeah, you might not have thought it was dumb, but then there's a sound effect that you associate with
it being dumb, right?
Yeah.
Right, or being mean or whatever, and so they really clever at being able to. I think it's all in the editing where they can really suck you into the story. Basically, they're manufacturing it from collected footage, which is kind of interesting in itself. But those shows are like the Pringles of TV. They're made to be addictive to where you flipping through the channels and you're watching Flavor of Love and you can't look away, and next thing you know you've watched every episode.
Flavor of Love is a classic, really.
Well, it is a classic. I watched it when it came out. I was still into that stuff when it came out.
I mean, I say it somewhat facetiously, although I did actually really enjoy that show.
Miss New York?
And, like,
Hell yeah.
oh my God, I love New York. I mean, she's just so ridiculous, and it's so dramatic, and it kind of like just watching things like that. It's like, man, like it's just kind of fun and ridiculous, you know. And it's, I don't know.
You want to?
It's not serious, really, at all.
If you go on YouTube and you look up Friends, the TV show Friends, without the soundtrack, David Schwimmer comes off as such a creepy guy when he will say certain things like, Rachel, you're dating someone now, but without the laugh track, he's just a creepy guy. All those sitcoms, when you take away the soundtrack.
Kind of had that with the Frasier recently.
Yeah.
There's like an episode of Frasier where you're all like, this is, Frasier's bad. Like,
even some of the more popular ones like The Big Bang Theory, and I used to like the one.
I don't like The Big Bang
How
Theory.
I Met Your Mother. I like that for a while. If you watch any of those without the soundtrack, you realize that they're just not funny.
I really don't like shows with laugh tracks usually,
No.
or it's like this is like ruining it. Like other like kind of sitcom things or like family drama. Like I like Modern Family.
Yeah.
I really like Goldbergs. But I mean laugh track stuff. I just don't like it, and it just seems like someone's pressing play and stop and.
Well,
I don't
I
know.
think in general the network shows the networks are kind of dying because they
I
still
think they're
have.
gravitating away from that, but it still is.
Yeah, even when they go to dramas, they do procedural. It's crime. It's either cops or lawyers or doctors or and whereas Netflix and some of the other venues, they're doing oddly specific topics, and I think that's what the audience wants now. So they want Game of Thrones. Now, not everybody's going to watch that, but the people that do watch it will never miss an episode. So shows like Law and Order, which everybody can kind of watch it.
That's another one for
I like the original Law and Order, and even the spin-offs. CI.
I have like a problem with Law and Order SVU.
I think that's another one though. That's like once I start watching it, I can't stop watching it.
Yeah,
Like,
you could tune in for a minute. It's very compelling.
But also they play it like incessantly on USA, and like so it's just that. And then there was one point where I would watch it whenever it was on there, and then also on Hulu I started from the beginning, and then I don't know.
Now it's on Netflix.
I don't know. I don't even know how many times I've watched it. I mean, there's still new episodes. It's the longest running Law and Order.
Yeah.
But there's still new episodes, which, I mean, some of them are pretty cool because they're using real life
Sure.
like things. Like they had like a fake
Ripped from the
news.
headlines.
They had like a fake news episode, and that was like shortly after the fake news stuff was like a thing. And so, I mean, but
I think that's
don't
why
know.
that show's lasted so long, is because they do the rip from the headlines where they try to be, they'll
They
put out
try to recreate a seemingly real situation that's applicable at the time.
Yeah, and which I think is kind of a neat aspect of the show. But
it's completely dramatic, though.
It is. And
like, there's some things I'm like, man, like, no mothers with any sort of paranoid personality disorder should ever watch this show because, or Taken, because they'll never let their kids do anything.
Right.
Or, so, I mean, but
I think the 1 hour procedural drama where like every episode is a beginning, a middle, and an end of itself, that format is definitely starting to die more, where people, with Netflix, anything made for Netflix, it's serialized because they want you to binge watch it, and I'm noticing that
it doesn't have to have an ending in.
Yeah, every episode is a cliffhanger to the next episode on purpose, and one law.
That's how I felt Walking Dead was, though, because I really fell out of Walking Dead because it was too much.
Well, Walking Dead, the problem, I was never a huge fan of it, but I think they just went on too long to the point where
I agree.
It got ridiculous, and it's a cash cow, and they knew it, and they just.
The first couple seasons, I think, were really good.
Sure.
However, then it just started, like, literally nothing happens in the episode, and then they do something in the last, 5-10 minutes, and it's like, oh, my God. But it's like, towards the end of me even watching it, I would fast forward through the entire thing.
To see what
And then it's like, literally nothing happened. Like, Rick lost his mind for the entire episode, and it's like, I get why, I could look up a synopsis and figure out the story in 10 minutes.
Well, and if you look at the budget, too, of, the early ones, they were spending a lot more money per episode, and then you can see there's less zombies, there's less destruction, they're more out in the woods or whatever, and it's a business at the end, so they're like, people are going to watch no matter what we do, so
let's not do anything for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
No,
I don't know. I know some people that are really into it. That's cool, but personally,
now I thought that Breaking Bad was good because they had that beginning, middle, and end, the whole series conceived.
Right.
You knew how many episodes.
That was a great show.
It was a great show. It was a great ending, but I think the ending was planned well before they decided they need to end the show, whereas most of the shows have a terrible ending, and that's because how do you sum up 8 years of a show in one episode, which is what they try to do. The good series, they're building up to that episode, at least in the last season, maybe even the last 2 seasons. But usually they kill off somebody or something dramatic happens. And in real life, that's not usually what happens. Life continues. So, I almost think, as much as it would piss people off, the way to end a series is just to have it be like just a regular episode, and then that's that things are going to happen, and just leave it. The whole thing's a big cliffhanger, and there's no big hoopla. But it's this couple finally gets married, and then they have a baby, and it's the last 3 episodes, everybody's life they have these big life changes, and then it's over, and it gets kind of ridiculous. But I don't know. I don't know what the point of it is, even be talking about it.
We're talking about TV. We love TV.
Well, we do watch a lot of different things. Sometimes I just look for what's the most fucked up documentary I can watch right now.
Yeah.
One of the most recent ones was what was it? Dead Mummy Dearest or whatever. It's on HBO, and it's about a girl for an entire life. Her mom had Munchausen by proxy.
Oh, right.
And basically
kept trying to kill her.
Didn't kill her, but kept her sick for way longer than in her entire life. And then what ended up happening is that the girl Gypsy, as a teenager, she met a guy online who was maybe not completely with it, but he killed her mom.
Oh.
And she's serving a prison sentence. She'll be out when she's 32.
Oh.
But basically, she was in a wheelchair for a really long time.
Wow.
Her mom was injecting her with more drugs in her feeding tube and keeping her intentionally sick for whatever reason. But she's dead, so we don't know. But that was really interesting.
I do like the documentaries that go into a weird avenue, or they even I mentioned on an earlier podcast today that the Jiro Dreams of Sushi.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's just when you just take
Is
something.
that good? I haven't watched
Oh,
that. Like
It's incredible, and
it's really highly rated.
it is, and you would think, well, but it's about a guy that just single-mindedly focuses on one thing in every detail of it, and there's something kind of special about that. And I think that I like the documentaries where they take an obscure subject that you're like, how is that even interesting? Like The King of Kong, where they talk about
God,
the guy.
I love that one.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
It's such an odd thing.
What's funny is that's like one of my mom's favorite movies because I watched it with her.
Oh, nice.
I watched like when I was unemployed, and
it kind of shows you that if you look at anything deep enough, everything's super interesting on some level if you look at it deep enough. And so I always try to look for the ones that are about the most mundane topic that you're like, how can they make a documentary out of this? There's one that I want to watch. It's about people that do demolition derby with school buses. And I'm like, how can this be compelling? But if it's done well, it can be. Now, it might just be stupid. And in which case you just don't watch the whole thing. But it is.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, Jiro Dreams of Sushi is a great movie because you just watch how one person tries to perfect one thing to be the best in the world and just never stops trying to improve. And if you want something funny, you got to watch on Netflix Documentary Now. It's
Yes!
that is hilarious.
Yes.
Oh my
Fred
God.
Armistead and
Yeah.
Oh
Bill
my gosh.
Hader.
It's-
They copy the
It's
style.
great. And then there's some another thing that I love about it. Like they copy the exact style and it's great. But then they also like it makes me watch documentaries that I haven't
Yeah.
seen. Like I had
Yeah.
never seen Great Gardens.
Yeah.
Like I had not.
Yeah.
But that made me want to watch it, and then I was like, "Oh my god!"
And it's-
Like it was like dead on.
And
It was
they don't
hilarious.
just go for the joke.
Yeah.
It's sad and it's compelling and like it's probably as good as the actual
Yeah.
documentary. So sometimes the only thing that's funny is that it's Bill Hader and Fred Armistead, and you're like,
Yeah.
this is
And it's
fake, and that's
ridiculous
why it's so
that
funny.
they-
Is because
yeah.
it's fake. But when they start telling a sad story.
Their
It's a
Thin
sad
Blue
story.
Line one was really good too.
Those guys are two of the most
Yeah.
talented people out there, man. I love them when they were on Saturday Night Live, and the way they can pull off that.
I liked what Stefan.
Yes. Well,
Yes.
John Mulaney. Yeah, John Mulaney again.
Yeah.
Yeah. 'Cause
Stefan, yeah, he was great.
John Mulaney wrote all the
Like,
stuff.
so like ask me about like what's happening if we had a Stefan.
have you seen
like,
I like when Fred Armistead would come in with a big stack of papers, but he'd talking all non sequiturs. It's like it's one of these things that's so to put a bow on it. It's one of these things that you can only sum up with a few words, and it's a big topic that overall encompasses everything that not few or many people understand ever anywhere in society or the world at large. And he just keeps going. I mean, he never makes a point. He does it for like 5 minutes. And of course, I saw Drunk Uncle came back. Yeah, I watched it on
Drunk
YouTube.
Uncle,
Drunk
yes.
Uncle.
Yeah.
That might be one of
Bobby,
the best character that's ever been on
Yeah.
Saturday Night Live. Oh my God! Whenever just thinking about Drunk Uncle, I hope they never make a movie because they'll ruin it. But God, if you've not watched yet Drunk Uncle and you're listening to this, go on YouTube and look up Drunk Uncle on YouTube and he does a little segment during the news on Saturday Night Live, and it's hilarious.
Yes.
And with
Totally.
that, we are at 2 hours.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, 2 hours.
And this is my third podcast of the day, and this has been a fun one. I'm glad they were all good. But this one was good. We ended with some yucks, man. Thanks,
Yeah.
Matt, for coming in.
No
I almost made you
problem,
spill
man.
your beer.
Yeah, no problem.
And Corinne, thank you very much for coming on.
You're welcome.
This was a lot of fun.
It was great.
We started out pretty seriously, and we ended up
I
silly.
know. I was like, I mean, I'm glad like you came in just to change up like for a
Yeah.
reason for an intermission.
Yeah.
And then because I mean I like talking about serious things,
Yeah.
but then
I'm curious.
I
what
like
you guys
being
talked
like
in the
talking
first
about
one. I can't wait to hear
We
it.
talked
ridiculous.
About, we got deep on like life stuff and
yeah,
it was really
serious.
deep at
I mean,
the
it was
beginning.
good,
It was
but
good.
Yeah.
I mean,
But really,
I like talking about like this shit too.
well, I think
Because
this is
this, like the second half, this is how I normally am.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, I feel like I mean, it was serious. Like, I don't think I've been that serious that long for a long time. Like, even job interviews have been, but it was still good. I mean, it was just,
But I think that's the advantage of doing a podcast where it's long form is that if you keep going long enough, you break down that wall where you get to that point. And not all of them have been able to be that successful because we either time constraints or I didn't figure out how to do it. But I love that we were able to take it to the next level, because ideally when I tell people about the podcast, the idea is that we start out pretty specifically about something, and eventually I want the topic to just go off. I want it to go off the rails to where you're talking about whatever.
Are we allowed to do another one that's like even more ridiculous?
Oh, we can. Oh, yeah, we can definitely do a completely
round two.
So one of the things that I've talked with Will Wallace about, who's a special co-host many times, is that we would do one from here, but we'd be facing there, and what we're saying on the mics would be broadcast over the speakers, and it would be a funny one.
Yeah.
So he's right. He said that it should be funny, and so keep that in mind. And when we're
I will do it.
Okay.
If you would have me, but you don't have to.
No, I'd have you for sure. You're funny. I think you want to have it be funny and lighthearted and silly. And,
yeah, like I can totally do that. But also the things we were talking about initially are important.
Yeah.
And cool.
Well, I think,
I was just feeling you out too. Like, all right, well, let's
we're trying
see,
to figure each other out.
It's the first time you met.
And then as soon as, briefly we met whenever you guys played here.
Other than to shake hands, and I knew your name and said hello and come on the podcast.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I'm Corrine. You're like, oh, yeah, I'm supposed to talk to you.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And this is actually, for me, a big success, because it's exactly, we got to know each other and we broke down that wall, and people got to learn about your serious side in the first half and your fun side and your silly side in the second half. And
I think people that know me will be surprised that I was
really
that serious.
Yeah.
Like, is this really Corrine? Like, are you serious?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that we got to the side that everybody knows, but for them, maybe it's good for them to see the eye-opening side. And, we're probably talking about the podcast on the podcast. People are probably like, okay.
It's a little redundant.
Very meta.
Yeah, please.
So meta.
Please, James, pat yourself on the back
Spice.
even more. Yeah, thanks, Spice.
We should make that a hashtag wheeling.
Yeah. Well, I did use Matt for a while there. I was using Matt on the opening of the podcast. We're going to turn up this podcast.
It's the whitest thing I've ever heard.
And then I started using different music, so I couldn't use it up.
It's fine. Don't use it ever again, because it's terrible.
Give me a good, clear thanks, Spice, and I'll edit it in occasionally on the intro of a podcast.
Thanks, Spice.
Thanks, Spice.
Thanks, Spice. And with that, this has been a very fun episode of the James Wodarcyk Experimental Podcast. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe and all that nonsense. And for God's sakes, if you listen this far and you don't live in the Ohio Valley, please add a comment either on the podcast page or the YouTube page or the Facebook page or somewhere. Let me know where the hell you're from and why the hell you're listening to a Wheeling-based podcast. I'm glad that you do. I'm glad that you do, and I really appreciate it. But I'm really curious because we've had downloads in Japan, New Zealand, Australia, England, Germany.
Do you have a P.O. box? You should ask for legit fan mail.
I should
ask for fan mail and read it.
I would. I'm gonna. That's a good idea. Thank you for the suggestion. You can get a P.O. box.
No,
pretty
thanks,
cheap.
Spice. Thanks, Corrine.
Yeah, thanks, Spice. Now I have to answer mail and viewer letters. I could actually just come up with a. You know what? Send me an email to jwexpod@yahoo.com. I only use it to set up the accounts for the email. So, feel free to just email me. Any questions?
Send money via PayPal.
Please,
Ooh, yes.
I need money. I'm light on motorcycles at the moment.
None have shown up to his house lately asking for them.
And by all means, if anybody wants to donate a motorcycle to me, it must be running. I'll take it. And I'm still looking for a Porsche 911 for someone to give me.
Not the September 911.
Not September 911, a Porsche 911 or Porsche, if you will. So
Those
if anybody
are
has a
the
free
worst.
Porsche, yeah. They're bad for the environment. Anyhow, all right. I've gone on long enough. Again, thank you, Corrine and Matt, for interrupting the podcast. Until the next time.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, boys.
See ya.
It's the best of a yearning, less transparent.